Thank you. And I'm going to read an excerpt I haven't read out loud before, so you can let me know if it's a good one. It's just the first page. I inherit trauma the moment I am pulled, disappointingly female, from my mother's open stomach. I am never simply just a baby. At birth, I join a new generation of people who will carry the burdensome weight of my family's history on our shoulders and in our bones. After all, mine is a family that has, on multiple occasions, had its land invaded, been caught in the crossfires of war, and been forced to flee. First, it is the Japanese who come knocking on our doors in the late 1930s, forcing my grandparents out of their original homeland of China and into neighboring Vietnam in 1938. Then, just a few decades later, there is a war in Vietnam, the fall of a city, and two teenagers fleeing their home with hundreds of thousands of their brothers and sisters. These two teenagers, Hai Phan and Tran Huang, leave behind everything they know to become displaced boat people, stateless refugees, and citizens of a strange foreign land called Canada. It will be more than a decade before they become my parents. This is only a cursory overview of my family's history and the intergenerational trauma I inherit on that June day, but there is literal trauma at my birth too. My mother is terrified when she first sees me because, unlike her other children and most babies, I am completely, unsettlingly silent. I have no pinched face, no wailing cries, no angry red cheeks. Instead, I am unmoving, a purplish corpse blue. After an excruciating beat, I finally squeal, and relief floods my poor mother's chest. This relief is later dashed when her mother-in-law, my ama, expresses disappointment that a daughter has been born rather than the anticipated, expected son. My mother has failed. She will receive no congratulations that day. My mother is alone in that hospital room with her near stillborn daughter. My father is nowhere in sight. He isn't there to give mom a loving squeeze of her shoulder as she is cut and pried open. He isn't there, his racing heart matching hers beat for beat, as they wait to see whether I am alive or dead. He isn't there to collapse against my mother as my slow-coming screams ring through the air, anxiety releasing from his body with each of my tiny, labored breaths. He isn't there because he is at work. Always, always at work. On that June day and the hundreds of days before and after, work is his top priority, not a second daughter who should have been a son. His accumulation of cash and experience means security for our family. It means food on the table, an assurance that he and my mother will never again starve, and that their children will be spared the horrors of their dirt-poor childhoods in bombed-out Vietnam. It means the sacrifice and pain of leaving behind their country, their culture, and their home will be worth it if they can just say they've made it. Yet a small part of me, a pointy shard within me, always wonders if he would have been there even if it had been his day off. Who is my father, really, outside of work? Who is my mother? And then I just want to read a short. I am 3 years old when I meet my replacement. Instead of a squirmy, red-faced little thing, what comes to consume my parents' already scarce time and attention is a quaint red-bricked building in Kingsville, Ontario, a small town where the people are as friendly as they are pale. It's a blazingly sunny day in 1991, and our family of 5 has just pulled up to the back of that red-bricked building in our trusty red Chevrolet Lumina. I remember straining my short neck to look up at this unassuming place my parents kept saying we would make our own. Like so many other Chinese families who have settled in small towns across Canada, our path toward the elusive Canadian dream would begin with a family-owned business. This building would be transformed from a generic coffee shop into a humble restaurant serving Chinese Canadian cuisine with my parents at the helm. To stake their claim on this building, my parents bestow a name upon it, my name. At birth, I was christened Rachel, the Anglo name on my government documents, but to my family, I've always been Little Mei. In Chinese, Mei can mean beautiful or bright or reliant or even Chinese plum. It is a name that takes on different meanings and significances depending on the tone, context, and intentions of the speaker. With such stunning versatility and range, it seemed a natural fit for my parents to name this new building, this new adventure, this new evidence that they'd finally succeeded in Canada after me, their youngest child. They name it the Mei Inn. What do you think, Mei? My dad crouches down low to meet my eyes. My older brother, John, who is 10, grumbles behind him in typical middle child fashion, envious that it is my name emblazoned on the restaurant. How come you named the restaurant after her? Can you name a dish on the menu John's Jumbo Shrimp? It is a monumental day, the turning point for our family. Finally, my parents have something that is all theirs. They can be their own bosses, set their own hours, make even more money. For two kids who survived bombs and starvation during a pointless war in Vietnam, it is a dream come true. I didn't know it at the time, but that unassuming red-bricked building would become my parents' new baby. I was no longer the only Maymay in their lives. From that day on, I am a restaurant kid.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. That was a wonderful reading. So hello, everyone. My name is J.F. Garrard. I'm the deputy editor for Rice Paper Magazine. I'm also a host of a podcast about writing and publishing called The Artsy Raven. And I'm actually a little bit nervous because this is the first time I've interviewed an author live. Usually we do it on Zoom and then I can edit out any naughty bits, But so today we'll do our best. We released our 79th episode last week. So we'll see when I get the recording. We'll release this as a podcast episode as well for everyone to enjoy and to look up our mistakes later. But anyhow, so okay, let's start off a little bit about the journey of the book. So I know it started off as a piece in an article before it became a book. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the piece and how did it transition from being an article to a book?
Yeah, so I went to school for journalism because I just grew up loving the written word. As Bonnie mentioned in the intro, I found a lot of escapism growing up. I would spend hours at the library reading books. It was just a way for me to experience life beyond what I felt was very stifling restaurant walls where, as the baby, the expectation was that I would stay out of the way, be quiet, be a good girl, don't get in mom and dad's way. So for me, one way to do that was just to dive headfirst into reading. And I just fell in love with that process. So, of course, being a bookworm, I always dreamed of writing my own book, but I didn't think that it was possible for me, publishing is, even to this day, still very elite, still very exclusive, and still very white, I'll say it. So I just didn't think it was a dream for me to have. So I went to journalism school, became a communication, a writer, and I was like, okay, this is all the writing I'm going to do, and that's going to be fine. And then 2020, COVID hit, and the rise of anti-Asian hate. And then there were more outlets were like, oh, Asians exist, that we should care what they have to say. And so there was an appetite for first-person essays. And I saw that and I was like, okay, maybe there's room for me after all. So I started writing and pitching first-person essays to different outlets. And that that reinvigorated something in me where I was like, oh, this is the storytelling I miss and that I want to do more of. So I wrote an article, and part of the excerpt that I just read was in the CBC article that I wrote, which was I think the headline was, "No matter how old I get, I'll always be a restaurant kid." And the feedback from that article was so overwhelming that my editor at CBC, she sent me a bunch of lovely notes that readers had sent in, and one of them was, "I would read a whole book about this." And I said to her, oh, just in passing, oh, that's my dream, actually. And she said, oh, really? I didn't realize that you wanted to write a book. I know an agent, and he just told me this morning that he's looking for fresh new voices. Can I connect you with him? And this is where a lot of my author friends say, I hate you. Because I met with him. I thought he was going to just give me some pointers and just say, okay, go on your way. Come up with a concept and then get back to me when you have something. But after the hour, he said, you know what, I love you, I love your story, and I want to represent you. So, yeah, I get why. After hearing from other author friends who do the querying process, they're like, yeah. I just kind of fell into it, and I think that is the power of storytelling, too, and connecting that, he saw something in me, and yeah.
Yeah, we hate you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Now, your title, Restaurant Kid, was it hard to come up with a title, or that was just natural coming from the article?
It was just natural. I think it wasn't until, because when you're living your life, it's just your life, right? You don't think it's interesting. You're like, oh, it's boring. Why would anyone care about this? But I noticed while when I would meet people as an adult, if I said that I grew up in a restaurant, they were instantly fascinated. And it made me realize that a lot of people just don't know what goes on behind the scenes at a restaurant, or like what restaurant families have to go through just to keep the businesses running. So it became a source of pride for me when people are like, oh, you're a restaurant kid, that's so cool. Tell me more about it. So for me, seeing how people reacted, it was just an obvious choice to.
Now, growing up though, were you proud, or were you, not indifferent, or?
For me, I was kind of, I don't know if I felt, there are times where growing up as a restaurant kid, especially as like the only racialized person, essentially, where I just felt like the coolest kid, right? Like kids would come over after school, they would get free food. They were like, oh my God, you get to drink all the pop you want. And I always tell, I always tell the story of how like one time I had a sleepover and we like put the chairs in the restaurant together and we slept on the chairs. They were awfully uncomfortable. And then we spent all night eating fortune cookies. And like my friends were like, oh, this is so cool. Like you just like, it's, we would never do this at my house. So on one hand, I was like, oh, I'm so cool. But then I also, as I got older, especially, and you become more aware of things. And I remember talking to friends about how expensive the dentist was. And one of my friends was like, oh, we never pay because my parents have insurance. And like my parents never had insurance. They're like business owners. So things like that where I was like, oh, wait, what's wrong with me? Like, why do my parents have to like pay for things out of pocket? And noticing that, people's parents would always show up for things like parent-teacher meetings and talent shows, and my parents never could because they were working all the time. So on one hand, I felt cool, but on the other hand, I felt like, why are my parents always seemingly so busy or too busy for me? So it was kind of like a double-edged sword.
Now, for memoirs, obviously it's based on reality. Like, was it hard? How did you pick and choose from your memories? Like, obviously you have so many good and bad memories. So how did you choose what to present?
Yeah, so when I wrote my first draft, I just wrote everything. Like part of the process, and so much of memoir writing is healing and processing for yourself. So I just wrote everything I needed to write. All the moments, the pain, the joys, I just wrote it all. And it wasn't until the editing process. Well, first of all, when I finished my draft, it was 120,000 words, and I needed to submit 80,000. So I had to cut a lot anyway. And like definitely had to kill my darlings. But for me, just getting everything out on the page, and then while editing, I really leaned on my gut a lot, because there were moments where I was like, do I really need to reveal this? This is pretty personal. Do I have to share everything? And then if my gut was telling me, I don't feel comfortable with having this out in the world, I just cut it. So I found that was really quite, like it was an intuitive process, because I know for those who have read it already, I know I still do share a lot, but there are actually moments that I was like, I think I can keep this to myself. I don't need to air out all my dirty laundry. So
I was going to ask if your parents have read it, so.
Yeah, my parents. So I always say this is the most heartbreaking part of the process, is because like I wrote this essentially as like a love letter to my family and my parents. And because they don't read English, they might never be able to actually read this love letter.
Google Translate.
Yeah. Yeah. So hoping we can get the rights sold so that it's like translated also into like Chinese or Vietnamese. But like my dad can read a bit, but he said that once he started reading, he's like, I couldn't get past the first page. I just started crying. And I was like, oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your family life. Like, was there a typical day that you remember being very visual in your head?
Yeah, well, it's always just like wake up, and like my siblings, essentially, I think this is very common, especially in immigrant families. My older siblings were quite a bit older than me, so they really took on the burden of my care because my mom and dad were up early at the restaurant, chopping stuff. Like the restaurant life is, like, for those who don't know, it is pretty much 24/7. So mom and dad were up like 7 a.m. They're in the kitchen, they're chopping things, they're getting everything prepped for the day. So it was really my siblings who would like get me dressed, get me ready to go to school. And then once I got back from school, it was like either helping out, my job as the baby. I did a lot of dishes. I made a lot of wontons. My sister ran cash, and she was 12 years old making cocktails. And she would get complaints from people. They're like, this tastes like gasoline. And she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm 12. Like, I can't taste it. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. And then my brother was in the back, like cutting chicken and, taking out the garbage and stuff. So we each had our like role to play. And, I did a lot of floating around, living on the margins, I always say, trying to stay out of the way, talking to different people. And my favorite time of every day was 10:30 p.m. because that was the time when, everything was packed away, the restaurant was closed, and we had dinner together as a family. So it was the one time of the day where I felt like the restaurant was not at the forefront of everyone's mind. It could go into the background a bit, and I was able to shine a little bit. So that was the most cherished time for me.
Okay, now I know your parents haven't read it. Now, did any sibling complain they didn't get enough screen time or writing time in this book?
No, my brother always jokes that he's gonna come up with Restaurant Boy.
Yeah. A sequel, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like they were all very supportive. Like I got a question yesterday from someone who's like, you're Asian, and a lot of the stereotypical Asian family, like where the parents expect you to be a lawyer or a doctor. But like with my family, they were just always so supportive of my dreams. And I know I say this all the time, but when I told my parents that I wanted to be a writer, the very first thing my dad said was like, Rachel, it's my dream for you to share the story of our family. So for me, it wasn't a thing where I felt ashamed or like nervous. Like they were walking alongside me every step of the way. They opened themselves up for interviews. I did multiple interviews with each member of my family for this book. And I feel like it's the greatest blessing because it forced us to talk about things that we would have just not talked about forever. Like, I think this is very normal in families. We just repress things forever. We keep silent. We don't share. But because I was writing this book, they actually opened up to me, and we got to talk about things that, like, I got to know my parents on a level where I finally feel like I know them as people now. And for most of my life, I didn't know that. Like, I just knew them as busy restaurateurs or mom and dad. So now they have like full personalities and like histories. And I honestly don't think I would have gotten that information if I didn't have the process of writing this memoir.
Well, but you're right. The stereotypical Asian family, doctor, lawyer, whatever. But I mean, I understand why, because they've worked so hard to come to a foreign country. They want their kids to do well, and they want their kids to do better than them, right? In many ways. So you're very lucky. You had a choice. I mean, now, was there any particular memory that you remember talking to your parents about that was challenging, or, that you learned something that you didn't know before?
Well, there's, not to spoil my own book, but my parents fled Vietnam in 1978, and neither of them had been back to their hometown since fleeing. So it was 45 years. And then because of this book, we had always said, let's go back to Vietnam as a family. But we just, how you always put things off. You're like, that's for another day. But then because of this book, I was like, okay, we're contractually obligated that we have to go to Vietnam. So I took them back last year for a month, and just like there's no words to describe.
The shell shocked at how much it's changed.
How much it's changed, but how much also has stayed the same. So like my parents, like they're from Haiphong in the north, and they were able to navigate completely off of muscle memory, like how to get back to their old homes. And both of their old homes are still standing. And going there, we ended up bumping into people who remember them and their family. So like this, it's such a special experience to walk on the streets that your parents had, like, have memories from when they were children. And at my dad's old house, there's still a hole in the wall that had been bombed out. And like, just imagine I was seeing my 65-year-old dad crawl into this hole where he used to cower and shake as a child when the bombs would come. So he was like telling us like these stories, and he was opening up about things. And at one point, he started breaking down and he just started crying on the street. And he shared a story that he had never told anybody in over 50 years. So just like experiences like that, like who gets to have like memories like that with their parents and to learn their parents' stories in such like a meaningful environment. So I don't even remember what your question was. I just went off on a tangent.
I don't remember. It's okay. Now, was it hard for you to go back? Like, do you know the language enough to navigate?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
I always say I'm just another second generation Chinese kid who doesn't know Chinese. That was another way that my parents survived in super small town Canada was we have to learn how to converse with our customers. So we're going to learn English and they practice by talking to us in English. So
I
now
see.
my
Okay.
Cantonese is pretty bad. And that's another challenge also because I'm trying to connect with parents, but there is a language barrier. So, yeah, that's challenging.
Yeah, because I remember, oh gosh, at an anime convention, we were doing a panel on Ghost in the Shell. And people couldn't understand why Asian people here were upset that, Scarlett Johansson got the role versus the Asian people in Asia who were fine with it. And I'm like, well, it's different once you immigrate to a country. Like we're like a branch. Like I don't know how to describe it. It's like, we're just different than
Yeah.
there. And then when we go back, it's a different expectation as well. When they hear that, oh, you don't speak our language. Where do you come from?
Yeah. Yeah, and I write about this a lot in my book, this feeling of navigating this murky middle where I'm both too Chinese to feel like I'm a real Canadian, but I'm too Canadian to be a real Chinese person. So I don't really fit anywhere because Canadians don't, I write about how I navigate this. I feel like I'm in there's an asterisk in my identity and I'm always operating in the hyphen. So always having one foot in each culture. And it's hard because how do you feel like you have a place to belong anywhere if you're too much to really fit in or not enough of something to fit in? So yeah, it's hard.
Okay, so you have Restaurant Kid, and you might co-write Restaurant Boy, maybe, but
I don't think so.
okay. So what's next? What's next?
So I very excitedly just signed a new book deal for a book of essays coming out in the fall of 2026. So it's called That Asian Girl is a Problem, and it's a series of essays. Each essay tackles a different domain of life where racialized women are made to feel like a problem. So in the workplace, modern dating, in our own bodies. So I'm going to... I always say, surprise, I have more trauma to unpack. Yeah, because I didn't even get to talk about workplace stuff in this book, but lots of content.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to reading your next book.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have maybe 15 minutes. We can open it to the audience. So, a question?
So you spoke about the workplace. I read an account by one of the folks who work in the Chinese restaurant. And he had written that beyond the swing door between the kitchen and the restaurant, there are two different cultures, two different regulations.
Yeah.
Does that hold for your account?
Oh, yeah. When in the dining room with customers, you're all smiles, you're very polite. How can I help you? In the kitchen, parents are fighting, they're swearing, we're getting yelled at. So we tried to hide the high tension, although sometimes when the doors are swinging open, if you listen, you can hear some swearing. But yeah, we tried to, the experience for the customers, you want them to have a good time. You don't want them to be as stressed out as we are in the back. But yeah, it's two completely different worlds. And I was talking to some restaurant kids in Vancouver's Chinatown this morning, and we were talking about how for a lot of customers, their experience at a restaurant is just like the 90 minutes, 2 hours where they enjoy a lovely meal. It's their time for their families to get together. And you don't necessarily think of the families who are behind the swinging doors who have been working 12-plus hour days and are on their feet nonstop. So one of the things I really wanted to accomplish with my book was just to share an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at just the sacrifices that lifestyle demands of every member of a family. So hopefully I accomplished that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
So you mentioned that, growing up, you learned how to make wontons really well. Because we're restaurant kids too. And I will say, I do not have an affinity for, when it comes to snow geese, we have to,
The string.
I hate snow geese to this day. I will not cut a snow geese. I would piss at any sight of snow geese. So wontons, you still like wontons?
I do. I do still like wontons.
Is there
Yeah.
any food that you're you hiss at, the way I hiss at snow geese?
Chicken balls? No, you don't have chicken balls.
No, because like so much of the food that we serve at the restaurant is not food that we eat as a family. So like chicken balls. Yeah. So I didn't read the excerpt here, but chicken balls kind of feature prominently in my story because I just remember mom and dad whipping chicken balls at each other when they were fighting. So that's what chicken balls mean to me. I know a lot of Canadians, it's like the quintessential Chinese food. But for me, it's just like a weapon.
I wanted to ask you what your go-to foods to order are at a typical Canadian Asian restaurant. Plus, what would your dream dinner banquet for 10 people be?
I don't really go to too many Chinese. I know they definitely have a place, like in the fabric of Canada, Chinese Canadian restaurants. When I go home, I do get cravings for my mom's pork fried rice with my dad's sweet and sour sauce. So I do eat that a lot. But my dream banquet, I always say my mom's braised pork belly with the preserved vegetables. My dad makes this lobster. I think it's Hong Kong style. I don't really ever see it on menus, but it's like
Steam? No.
it's like there's evaporated and condensed milk and onions. It's like a sweet lobster, which I love. Dumplings, sumai, always different dim sum items. I don't know. I just want to eat everything all the time. So I'll have to get back to.
To a typical Asian, North American Asian restaurant and ask them what you can order off menu.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's like ingrained in me just to be like, be a good girl. Don't don't step out of line. So I always just think I don't want to cause too much trouble, get them to make a secret menu item, but maybe I should. I don't know. We'll see. Hi. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, for me, I take lots of breaks. Because when you're writing about heavy things, you feel heavy. Like there are times where I just didn't want to go to my computer because I knew it was going to be hard. I was going to feel a lot of painful things. So there's no shame in like writing 10 words. And if it's too much, step away from it because it doesn't serve the work if you're forcing yourself to write through, pain or emotions that just feel triggering. And for me, what I found really helpful was I know memoir is nonfiction, but you do end up applying a lot of fiction, like fictional devices for memoir. So for me, treating the characters of my parents, for example, when I was writing about them, I was like, this isn't mom and dad. These are the characters of George and Tran. And I gave myself permission to see them as like from an arm's length. So it helped me to, if I'm seeing them as characters, I'm not attaching all the pain that I feel for my mom and dad. They're just characters. Gave me a chance to see them almost more objectively because I can like walk away and be like, okay, what were the characters of Tran and George thinking in this moment? Why might they have acted this way? And it gave me a lot more compassion for my parents, seeing them as characters versus just mom and dad, because I could see them in all their complexities versus how they may have hurt me as my parents. So I think you almost have to remove yourself from the people and the incidents that you're writing about, just to try to create emotional distance from the work. So yeah, lots of breaks, treating your characters in your memoir as characters, I think that helps just to give you some space from the traumatic events. And when you're capable, and if you're into it, therapy.
Are there any other questions? No? Oh,
When you were in the editing stages and just checking maybe the facts, how did you go about that? Like, did you show any parts to any family members, or did you have a process?
Yeah, my sister read it. I gave my brother the option to read it, and he said, no, whatever you write, you write. And if you tear apart this family, then you tear apart this family. So, but my sister read it, and, you know, she confirmed that I wrote about people and incidents with a lot of compassion, because that is the juggling act of memoirs. You want to write honestly, but you also have to write lovingly. Like, these are people, I'm not out here trying to burn bridges. These are people I love dearly. So, always treating them with compassion. Because I say, and this isn't exclusive, don't repeat it to anyone else, I say I was very gentle with my brother in this book. I could have gone way harder. But that's part of writing a memoir, is just like, okay, these are living, breathing people. So try to write about them fairly, while also being honest. So there is a balancing act there. But yeah, I've definitely had to show them and run things by, just, Mom and Dad, is it okay if I talk about this? And yeah, that was the process I underwent. Thank you.
cool. Okay, we have one question there. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how you distinguish your book from other Chinese restaurant type book stories that were out there, like South Korean Nation. You come from a different generation than books that were before you. There's a lot of trauma in those books. Second or first generation. How did you make your book, or did you want to make it
Yeah. Yeah, I did. One of the ways I did that was I don't just write about my experiences in the restaurant. I also write a lot about me growing up as, you know, a young girl and then a young woman. So I write about scenes that are maybe a little bit spicy. I write about my sexuality. I write about my university days. So I think trying to show that even though the restaurant is like the centerpiece of like my life, that the reality is it's still a coming of age memoir as well. So I need to show what it was like for me at school, you know, in moments of bullying and like trying to come into my own. So I think what I do is like try to provide a more comprehensive look at what my life was like. It wasn't just the restaurant. I'm still navigating school and coming into my own. And also, I think I'm not afraid to go there in my book. A lot of people say it's so raw and unflinching, and you talk about things that I've never really heard people talk about before. So I'm super honest. I'll write about how the awful things that men have said to me to fetishize me, for example, or talk about some of the really heinous racist things that people have said to me at school. So I think for me, that was my way of subverting expectations of what like Asian women should be, and not wanting to be a docile, submissive, just take it. And I was like, no, I'm going to call out your bad behavior, and I'm going to be unflinching about it. So hopefully that sets my memoir apart.
kind of answered, but in the book and what changed your relationship with your parents? Did it do the same with your siblings? Did they, when they read it, did they call you out on anything? Like, oh, you know, your perception of this was actually completely different than theirs or their experience?
Not really, thankfully. Thankfully, I'm quite close with my siblings. So, but yeah, look, one of the things I remember my sister saying last year, she said, Rachel, I think your memoir has been really healing for our family, because it gave us the chance to actually have conversations and to not shut down and repress things. And even my brother, who is the opposite of emotionally available, he's like the first person who will be like, I don't want to talk about this, and then just like shut you out. But even he like sat down with me and like forced himself to share. So I think yeah, it was just incredibly healing for all of us to be able to have those conversations. And I think for my sister, it was eye-opening because things that she didn't place a lot of emphasis, like for example, her moving out. So she's 9 years older than me, and because she pretty much was my pseudo mom growing up, so her leaving when I was in grade 5 was so hard for me because all of a sudden I'm alone. My like mother figure is gone, and she told me, she was like, I had no idea it was that hard for you. So stuff like that. While she was reading it, she was like, wow, I didn't know that. You know, for me, it was freedom. Finally, I can get out of like the shadow of the restaurant. But for you, it was just devastating. So that's just an example of when our perceptions were very different.
Any questions?
It was pretty much the
Oh.
extension of that.
Oh, okay,
How do you
okay.
get over repressed communication in the family and get over some of that trauma, right?
Yeah, and I recognize that not every family, like that I'm very blessed to, we're very open and honest anyway. So I definitely benefited from that, you know, I don't have the stereotypical, I don't know. They were, as I was growing up, they were like my dad was like the stoic, don't say anything, silent Asian dad. But as he gets older and he's discovered marijuana, he's gotten more chill and forthcoming. So I don't know. It just, everything happened at the right time where if I wrote this 20 years ago, no way they would have been this open with me.
So I guess the timing of the book is very important in a way.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have been in the headspace to write this book 10 years ago because I did have to spend years in therapy unpacking my own trauma and figuring out why I acted this way and how it was because of X, Y, and Z. So yeah, to write a memoir, you have to have done a certain amount of work of like introspection and like be in a place where you can reflect and it's not so raw. So yeah, I had to do that work.
Now, what was the most challenging part of writing the book?
Honestly, if I had my way, I don't think I would have had those conversations with my parents just because it's easy to put it off, right? Like it's hard to see your mom and dad crying. It's hard to see them reliving trauma and you don't want to put them through that. So I kept saying, I'll ask them next week. I'll ask them next time I'm home. And then years go by and you don't have those conversations. And I remember being in Vietnam and just staring at my parents and not wanting to ask hard questions because I didn't want to open up any wounds. But then I was like, you're under contract, you have to write this memoir. So that was really hard because, yeah, you don't want to see your parents in pain. But also, on the other side, talking about these things led to a lot of healing and led to some understanding. So you have to get through the discomfort to get to that other side.
Now, I know you were allowed to go to journalism school, but were there any other expectations for you, for your education or career-wise?
They just wanted me to get a good job, get a good education, because they grew up in wartime Vietnam, so they weren't able to finish school. You know, when Americans are bombing, they had to evacuate to the mountains. So for my dad, it was always his biggest regret that he had to stop school when he was in grade 3. So for him, it was just his like dream, like, oh my God, you're university educated. So they didn't really have any big expectations. They just wanted us to have more than what they had. And yeah, they just wanted us to be successful, you know, marry a nice boy, and yeah.
Now, what number are you? 3?
I'm the baby of 3, yeah.
Okay. Did they have different expectations for your siblings, though?
Yeah, I always say, so my sister's name is Lynn and my brother's name is John. So for the girls, I think they just wanted us to like go out, you go to university, get a good job. Like I said, find a nice partner. But for every Lynn and Rachel that is free to be their own person, there's always a John who's caught in the restaurant's net. So I think him feeling like the only boy, he feels a lot of pressure to stick around, help mom and dad with the restaurant. So I don't think my brother's ever felt like he can be free, because even when he would try to move out, mom and dad were calling him every weekend, and they would never say, come back and help us with the restaurant, but they would say things like, oh, I was so busy, like, oh, my back, like my back and my wrist hurts. And if you're a child, you're just like, oh, okay, I feel bad. I have to go back. So every time my brother tried to leave, he was pulled back in just because like my mom and dad rely on him so much. And I don't know how your restaurants were, but my parents, they're still working. They're in their 60s. And they've just never hired anybody. So they're still doing everything themselves. Yeah, they have trust issues, so they don't want to hire someone else. So for them, it's like, John, you're our son. Like, you have to step up, essentially. So I think he feels the burden quite intensely.
Okay, well, I think I got a warning, so we will have to wrap it up. Any one last question, anybody? Or okay, there we go.
Hi.
I'm visiting from Calgary and walked through some Kitsilano on this wall. It's so beautiful, so inspiring. I'm wondering if there's a place that you have that's beautiful and inspiring to you as well that might help you write the book or just like you love.
Honestly, the trip to Vietnam was probably the most meaningful experience of my life, and being in my parents' hometown and seeing the way the people in Vietnam, like people in their hometown, would rally around us. So like we would just walk around and people would be like, oh, here's a bunch of confused, lost-looking Asians with a white guy. Like maybe we should ask them what they're looking for. And like multiple people came to ask us, hey, can we point you in the right direction? Do you need to like talk to somebody? So I feel like just that community, I always say like even though I wasn't born and raised in Vietnam, it felt a lot like coming home. So it was such a community, and the country itself is beautiful, and you can get pho for 50 cents. It's just like an amazing, inspiring place, and that it connected me with my family is just a cherished location for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being a part of LiterASIAN, and thank you to the audience for taking the time to come out and listen to us. So.
Thank you for coming.